The panel is titled China's International Goals for the Olympics. And I think that's a good title because it draws attention to something I've been paying a lot of attention to, and people on the panel have already brought up or alluded to, and that is the distinction that you see in so much Chinese writing and commentary about international relations, which is my field, laying stress and emphasis on the difference between the international realm and the global realm. Okay, so with the slogan of the Olympics being one world and stressing that sort of thing, the world is really seen in China, at least among elite writers and people in a position to publish and influence, as being constituted of nation states, and exclusively of nation states, and anything asserted to be global, that is to say more fundamental than nation states, prior to nation states, kind of like all of humanity, that sort of thing, is either impossible and an illusion and can't really exist, or to the extent it nevertheless starts to appear, illegitimate in some way. And so when I was thinking about the Olympics, I wanted to think about, and especially the international goals, think about the whole phenomenon, not just the games themselves, but the year or more leading up to them, about how they would play out and illuminate this distinction between the global and the international. It's significant for two reasons. First, no global means no truly universal values that would be any deeper or more fundamental than the values asserted by nation states and defended by nation states, or even civilizations. It's sometimes difficult to know when reading the Chinese international relations writing whether it's really meant to be nation states or civilizations when slogans such as harmonious but not identical are asserted. I think Professor Xu was absolutely right to stress this slogan, which I actually, Hu Jintao I associate with more with Hu Jintao than with Wen Jiabao. But in any case, it's ubiquitous now in Chinese political commentary and in intellectual writing and international relations, that it's possible to build a world of entities that can interact harmoniously with each other, but not become identical. And that's enormously significant because it means not come to be alike in terms of what our fundamental values and aspirations will be. And of course, and then taking it one step further, it means that China will not necessarily have to become a democracy, a Western democracy, because all entities are fundamentally distinct. There can be no truly deeper than the nation state level, or maybe the civilizational level, global realm. And then more prosaically, or more practically, I guess you might want to say, it's significant in the sense that global civil society becomes impossible. So it's impossible for there to be any global, truly universal values. And when people assert in China, there are, of course, a lot of people in China think there are, and they try to assert there are universal values. They get themselves into trouble right away. Same thing goes with global civil society and its legitimacy or not. Almost all the commentary, at least that I've been able to access, and I've been trying to access a lot in the last few years on global civil society in China, dismisses it as either epiphenomenal, insignificant, bound to go away eventually, or to the extent that it won't go away, as illegitimate and therefore deserving to be suppressed. So the problem with that is, of course, that if the assumption is that every organization out there that appears in the international or global realm, the world, must be associated with some nation state, and that there can't be any truly global realm of people asserting that they speak on behalf of humanity or are interested in pursuing fundamental universal goals, well, then I think, first of all, it's not really accurate. Because states can't control. I don't think that the French government could have really so easily prevented protests against the torch and so on. It's not easy to control these groups in global civil society because they really are, to some extent, global. So without recognizing the existence of the global and the likelihood that the global will become even more significant in years ahead, I imagine the Chinese elite will be surprised in the future repeatedly. I think they were surprised by the torch protests, and I think there'll be more surprises of that nature in the years ahead. And what it means is that talking about the slogan harmonious but not identical means that there can really only be harmony. That's the goal asserted. There can only be harmony, though, if all the key actors agree to suppress the global. And if all the key actors, meaning all the leading nation states, don't agree that the global is illegitimate and should be repressed or at least contained in some way, then there can't be harmony. And so I would expect to see this tension appear again and again in the years ahead. So China's international goals for the Olympics, I think it's crucial, that's the title, and since Professor Wiseman is a person who is a specialist in precisely the school of international relations that stresses this distinction and explores this distinction, it probably wasn't a mistake that ended up. I think there's a subtlety there that it's worth paying attention to. So then, just a couple of questions. Did the Olympics change or shake at all this fundamental view of the world? Actually, I don't think so. I think, if anything, they would have deepened and reinforced the worldview. Not only because if you look at the way the Olympics themselves are carried out, I mean, the medal count is by nation state. They come in with the national flag. So all of that reinforces the view that there may be one world, but its legitimate constituent members are nation states, not some sort of universal humanity. And then secondly, the Tibetan Uprising and then the protests against the torch that followed. Obviously, we saw some of the images just shown a minute ago would have reinforced this notion that the threatening forces out there are at it again. They're trying to spoil this opportunity, this enormously expensive and time-consuming opportunity for China to improve its image, to show that it's back better than ever before. And there they go again. And again, indeed, if you look at the commentary on the anti-torch protests, it's always Western protesters in Paris or Western protesters in such and such a place. And really, it's hard to say whether they really were Western or something else. Okay, now then second to last, did the Chinese Communist Party achieve its public diplomacy goals, keeping in mind that the audience is international society, meaning states, governments, and their nationals perhaps, but their nationals as nationals, not as some sort of broad global public. I think everybody on the panel really were hit on the head, hitting the nail on the head in terms of what those goals were. The goals were obviously to demonstrate that China's rise is real. It's an increasingly powerful and accomplished country that's deserving of respect. And I don't think anybody would question that that goal was achieved. I mean, there was a spectacular, well-coordinated, well-organized, and carried out Olympics, no question about that. Then, though, the second goal, though, that this rise will be peaceful and not dangerous to anyone and shouldn't cause any alarms, because China's goal in pursuing this rise is to create a harmonious world, that it's a little more difficult to know whether that objective was attained. I mean, obviously, it's enormously complex to measure that kind of thing, right? You have to do all kinds of surveys and focus group studies all over the world. So the best I can do is tell you what my impressions based on watching the games on television in Bangkok, Thailand, and then watching as much of the CNN and BBC, global CNN and global, or maybe international, CNN International and BBC World. It might be significant that it's CNN International, BBC World, trying to read as much and trying to glean as much. My impression was that the media did a really good job, actually, at least these leading media, in portraying the full complexity of the game. Not only the positives and the accomplishments, but also drawing attention to some of the shortcomings, some of the lingering problems in China. I mean, there was this YouTube of a Daily Show segment that went around. I don't know how many of you saw that back in August, sort of mocking the media for not paying attention to the negative things that would occur in China. And there was a reporter who was in Beijing, and he was being asked he was sending in his report, and all kinds of bad things were happening around him, and he was just talking in nothing but glowing terms, and all the time there was a red light shining on his head, like so following him around, and he didn't realize. And so, actually, I think that was unfair. It was funny, of course, but really unfair, because at least the media coverage I saw was really balanced, and I think the media were ready to. They knew that they were going to be under pressure. They'd actually been NBC and others were suspected of being likely to play down anything negative and play up positive. I think they really did a thorough job, but the result was that you have increasing power and effectiveness on the part of China. That message came through, interacting with some things that worried people, some negative things that would happen, some tight control over the city of Beijing, people driven out of the city, and all of that kind of thing. So I kind of wonder if the ultimate impact would have been to raise anxiety slightly. Yes, we recognize the state is more powerful, the country is much more successful and back and all that, but also certain aspects to the way China is governed and organized and so on that slightly worry me. And so I don't know whether that was the peaceful part, communicating the peacefulness of the rise was necessarily achieved. I mean, I don't think that people would have had the impression China is inherently dangerous or an imminent threat to anything, but that's why I suspect possibly anxieties would have increased just a little. And that then leads to my big conclusion, at least it seemed big to me, that would apply to really not just these specific Olympics, but to public diplomacy, which I don't really know a whole lot about, but that I tried to think a little bit about. And there's really two aspects to this. First of all, even very, very big, expensive events and endeavors like this can't so easily be used to change pre-existing values and prejudices all around. Whether we're talking about inside the country whose state is pursuing these objectives, or the audiences out there being targeted. It's just really hard to change people's views because they're so deeply ingrained and rooted in history. And then secondly, really the reason for this is the world under globalization is so complex. It was complex enough before then, but especially with globalization is so complex, a dense network of interactions at all sorts of levels. It's really impossible to control your message once you put it out there. I mean, you can't control what will happen to the images of you put out. They get picked up by other people like Jon Stewart, all kinds of people, played with, manipulated, sent around for their own purposes. And it's really, even if you spend $40 billion, you can't control what's going to happen to the message you create. And so just imagine, I mean, not just in the case of China, but imagine President Obama just earlier this week giving an interview to an Arab television network and making the point, really trying to emphasize, America is not your enemy. I mean, so, okay, you can imagine what the reaction must be in much of the Arab world. Okay, that's nice to hear, but maybe we should wait a while and see whether that's actually accompanied by any significant change. Okay, thank you very much.